7:38 at News Talk 720 KDWN. I'm Alan Stock, and I want to thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday morning. Very, very happy to have in studio with me two gentlemen who I've known for years in different capacities, and one is Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, the other retired Metro Captain Larry Burns, and I want to welcome you both to the KDWN studios.
Morning.
Morning.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Alan.
Appreciate you both being here. It's a conversation. It's not a debate. I've already explained that on the air, and I've told you guys how I want to handle it. So one of you will become the sheriff, and I don't want either one to become sheriff by having anything slimed on them, from the other one. So that's how we're going to do it today.
Appreciate that.
Well, that's, and with that in mind, let me start out with an easy question here. Sheriff Gillespie has been one of the most transparent elected officials I've come across since moving to Las Vegas nearly 16 years ago. And when he was first elected, he committed to coming into the studio with me on a monthly basis. When he was out of town, he sent various officers to sit in for him. I believe you both pulled that duty at various times. Would you commit to continuing the process of monthly appearances in the studio to talk about the issues and to face the callers?
Most definitely. I think it's an absolute benefit to get your thoughts and procedures and whatever we're doing on the police department out to the community. We quite often don't have a venue to communicate all what's going on in the police department, and a lot of the opinions that are formed is because of lack of knowledge. And I think these kind of venues benefit in the police department and the community in that vein.
All right. That's Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo. Captain Burns?
Absolutely. And not only would I accept it, but we would thank you for that opportunity. It's exactly that, an opportunity to talk about the things that are occurring in a timely fashion and not waiting until months pass before we have a discussion with at least your listening public, and it's pretty broad, and plus the time is right. 7:30 in the morning is a good time for police administrators.
Good. Yeah. The sheriff comes in at 7 to 8 on the third Wednesday of the month.
Get everybody while they're driving in their cars.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Real quickly, just give me a quick rundown. Why do you think you are the best candidate to be the next Clark County Sheriff? Captain Burns?
Well, for me, it comes down to my vision of leadership, reducing violent crime, and a very difficult community over the last 3 years, working with community partners at every level, expanding the Safe Village model to work with citizens to that common end of having safe neighborhoods, safe schools. Violent crime is a big deal. It's been going up the last 2 years. Of course, our numbers have gone down in the last several years. So those partnerships and that partnership-based policing has been very effective. I think that I'm fiscally responsible, and that means I've got that mentality that we never ask for a dollar of the public's money until we explain exactly where that's going, and not just police officers generally speaking, but we're going to put 25 guys in traffic to cut down these fatalities. And then when it comes to the citizens' concerns, that use of force is something that deeply concerns them. In fact, there was a good article in the Sun today about that, that we ensure that there is a fact-based and timely method by which we look at these use of force incidents. I've been a part of that for many, many years, and like others, was a critical part of this process, the evolution of the process, which we embrace now, which we most all agree is not gone far enough. And finally, school safety, to be there for our children. We have the 7th largest school district in America, and we had Columbine and names like Sandy Hook. Columbine 15 years ago. Of course, the tragedy at Sandy Hook a couple of years ago now. What are we doing? Have we done everything we can to ensure that our schools are protected, that they are secure physically, that they are prepared mentally, that they are drilled so that we can protect them from, sadly, what has been occurring across our country for far too long?
Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, same question. Why do you think you're the best candidate to become the next Clark County Sheriff?
Well, I would sum it up with my education experience and my vision. Quite often you heard me on the campaign trail talk about my education. We're $750 million company. And I believe that the education is necessary to control something that big and have a budgetary fiscal responsibility associated with that. And the education gives you the ability to ask the right questions. Quite often in police work, we always continue to do the same thing and expect different results. Well, unless you ask the right questions, you are going to continue to do the same thing. So my experience, I've been on 26 years, similar to Larry, but in my experience, I've moved up the ranks through those 26 years. I've taken on more responsibility with each step. Currently, number 3 in the chain of command, had the ability to make some county-wide decisions, similar to what the sheriff's position would entail. I've been doing that for several years now, and it gives me the ability to understand the needs of the community currently, to know the needs of the community moving into the future. And that vision is a police department that's professional, accountable, and police is within the Constitution. It's unbiased, and we are currently have programs in place that are going in that direction. It was mentioned the use of force associated with police work. We just most recently had a use of force review board in which I am currently the chairman of, and where we're holding officers to a higher level of accountability associated with that, where we've lost the trust in the past with the community because of officer-involved shootings, and the department's changing, going in the right direction. And in similar fashion, last week during our crime meeting, we had all our community leaders in place to ask us how they see our police department and what we can do to improve. So those community relations are strong, and they're going to move forward under my tutelage. So.
Okay, that was the first question to each of the retired Mentor Captain Larry Burns, Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo. We're going to come on back, continue our discussion with them in a moment. If you want to join in, 702-257-5396, 702-257-5396. That's our Centennial Toyota phone line. Call or text, and we'll get back to these two gentlemen in just a moment. 749 at News Talk 720, KDWN. I'm Alan Stockton. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday morning. Great to have you with us. Coming up at 9 o'clock, it's the Kate on Legal Hour with Haynes and Krieger. Joining me in studio right now, the two candidates for the Sheriff of Clark County. I've got Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo and retired Metro Captain Larry Burns in studio. We're having a conversation. If you want to join in, 257-KDWN and 702-257-5396. I had other things I was going to get to, but you brought up Captain Burns' school safety, and Assistant Sheriff Lombardo, you picked up on some of that too. So I'm going to go with that for a moment. We are concerned about school safety, not only after Columbine and Sandy Hook, any of the other school shootings. There are different approaches people have to how schools should be made safe. Some people say that we need lockdown. You have to go in one door. It has to be buzzed to get in. Other people are saying we need armed guards at school, police officers or armed campus officers. Other people suggesting that teachers who have CCWs be allowed to carry, not open carry, but the concealed carry, to defend themselves or their students in the case of an attack. Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, give me an idea about what you would do to really try to make sure that the schools are as safe as possible.
Well, a lot of it's dependent on resources. It's a sad state of affairs here locally with the Clark County School District that they just don't have the number of resources in order to provide a complete safe environment. You'll never have a 100% safe environment, but what the answer to that is because Las Vegas Metro has partnered with the school district, and we assist in that security profile with the campuses. There was a couple questions or presentations you just stated, or whether you have individuals armed on site or not. I think an armed, professional, trained security personnel or police officer is an absolute benefit to the security profile within a school district. I do not condone the instructors being armed with firearms, because I think that takes away from the environment that's intended for students to learn within that environment. And a lot of things that you do in police work when you're associated with a firearm is training on the back end of that. You would be dependent on those individuals to have the training to react properly. Unless they're put in that situation at some point in their lives, they normally don't act properly. And you have the concern of students and or faculty or the parents that there's a firearm on campus and somebody might misuse it or obtain it and misuse it. So I don't condone that. But I do condone security personnel, professional security personnel trained in order to provide that protection for our students.
All right, Captain Burns, same question. I mean, you know the scenarios I laid out, the different options. If there are other options, let me know. But how would you help secure the safety of our campuses? I'm talking about K through 12 primarily.
Yeah, right away. And the universities are important too in this discussion.
Okay.
But
I'll bring that up next, but go ahead.
But right away, you partner with the Clark County School District. Those are the immediate partners. With other entities in Nevada, because oftentimes, and every other entity, whether it's NHP, Henderson, whether it's out in Mesquite, North Las Vegas, Boulder City, because right away, when those events occur, you need the closest immediate response. That becomes the key. Yesterday in Canada, we saw that. The response was immediate. Unfortunately, one life was lost before that response was, before the threat was mitigated. But you create a training, which we've done so many times in so many different ways. We have an active shooter training, but it has to be specific to that particular building. These buildings, there's no cookie cutter approach. They're all so different. The entrances are all so different. There needs to be, from an engineering point of view, a safety engineer, look at the entryway. Can you just walk right through, right past the front desk, and have access to all the classrooms? And do we want that? I would suggest that we do not want that. There's got to be the ability to deny access from the outside to the students, and that would be an important thing for me. As it relates to arming school teachers, which is one of the pieces that comes up nearly every day, I hear somebody ask about that. Look, in shootings where officers are involved, trained every other month at a minimum with those firearms, they hit their target under stress about 15% of the time. But let's suppose a teacher is much better, so they shoot and hit their target 25% of the time. An average of 4 rounds fired in an armed encounter at a minimum. So 1 round strikes a suspect, but the other 3 rounds go where? And that becomes the big issue in a school. Because just because you can't see doesn't mean you can't harm. So those walls are typically on 18-inch centers. They've got aluminum studs with drywall, and a 45 slug will go a long way through that drywall.
What about an armed officer at each campus?
That would be a preference to well before we arm school teachers, but there's great expense associated with that. And the reality is that if we're unable to control this, if this becomes epidemic, which feels like it is now, then that's where we'll end up. And there are countries that's exactly what they have. But prior to that, before we do that, there are steps to be taken that are common sense steps. And I believe that we can work together with our school district as it relates to the building itself, the structure, and then, of course, work together with our law enforcement partners to have a plan. And that what's wonderful is, Alan, is that the city's large, the school district's the 7th largest in the country, but we break things down into small bits, precincts, area commands, and we create relationships with the individuals in those schools.
Okay, I've got very little time for this segment, so let me get into this. Colleges, let's talk about colleges. It's been proposed and has not passed the state legislature that students should be allowed on college campuses to carry weapons if they have a CCW. We know of one case of one gal who was raped up in UNR, and she had a CCW, but she didn't carry because it's illegal to carry on campus. And that same guy that raped her the next year went and kidnapped and raped and killed a little girl. We know that whole story. So it's been proposed that to allow people on college campuses to carry if they have a CCW. A good idea or not? Captain Burns?
I don't believe that it's a good idea. The environment needs to be controlled. Safety measures for individuals, whether they're students, because this leads to a question that the 16-year-olds are at risk. And we talk about sexual assault, as you did there. There are risks to our entire population. Dealing with those monsters that perpetrate that crime, we need to ensure that our victims are empowered, that they come forward, that we prosecute to the full level those monsters, because historically, as you know, those monsters do not stop at one victim.
All right. Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, the same question about CCWs on college campuses by students.
I don't believe it's a good idea. It's an environment for learning, not an environment to worry about your safety. When you have individuals, especially young individuals, that you have to depend on their safety training associated with the purchase of their firearm and whether they properly used it, practiced with it, and have security of it when their backpacks compared to somebody else obtaining the firearm. So no, I don't condone it, and I think it's an environment for learning. And we should provide the proper security measures and the proper security personnel to provide that safety for those individuals.
And just as an addition to that, Alan, I mean, most state laws, you've got to be 21 years of age before you're able to carry like that. And so you're leaving the majority of the population unarmed. And so there's some holes in that. But making them safe, providing for their security, absolute necessity.
All right. All right. We're going to agree to disagree on that for a lot of reasons, but we'll let that go. You both agree with each other, but I happen to have different views. We're going to be talking about some of the biggest challenges facing Metro and what that means about the biggest challenge facing the next sheriff of Metro. We'll do that in a few moments. And also, I know the calls are coming in. We're going to get to the calls also. 702-257-5396, 702-257-KDWN, our Centennial Toyota phone line. Call or text. And we're going to come on back and continue our discussion with Joe Lombardo and Larry Burns after news, traffic, and weather on News Talk 720, KDWN, KDON.
And now, live from beautiful and exciting Las Vegas, one of the most influential talk show hosts in America, radio icon Alan Stock.
And a good morning. Great to have you with us on this Thursday morning. Joining me in studio, two men who are vying to become the next sheriff of Clark County. Two good people, by the way, and they get along real well during the breaks as well. Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, retired Metro Captain Larry Burns, and it was one of the toughest choices I've ever had in my life because they're two good people running for an office, and I think either one would be great, and I mean that sincerely. That's why we're not having a debate. We're having a conversation to get your ideas and what you would do under certain circumstances. I'll get to the calls in a moment at 257-KDWN, 702-257-5396, but let me do this real quick, get short answers as much as possible. Even though I know you're running for office, sometimes it's not easy, but what's the biggest challenge currently facing Metro and the biggest challenge facing the next Metro sheriff? Captain Burns?
The biggest challenge now facing Metro is to ensure the public that we are hearing them, that we are in touch with them, no matter what the issue is. I've used one throughout the campaign that has been a difficult one for the organization and very difficult for the community. Response to minor vehicle accidents. We currently have a policy that we do not respond unless we're specifically requested for a number of reasons. But the community doesn't want to hear that. They want us to respond. They want us to be there for them. And that's just tonight. It's not the biggest issue, but it's representative of the biggest issue that the community pays us well. They've supported us for all the years that I've been a police officer, and they're shouting back to us, "Hey, listen, we're here, and we want you to serve us, and we're asking for this particular service for a number of reasons that are very, very understandable."
Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, same question. The biggest challenge facing Metro and the biggest challenge facing the next Metro sheriff?
Well, I think Larry hit it on the core with just talking about responding to accidents, and that's officers per thousand. Our budget needs to be addressed in order that we can hire more police officers. Currently, we're about 174 per thousand police officers, and the national average is 2.2. Larger jurisdictions, it's 4 per thousand. And police officers make a difference. violent crime is starting to tick up. The inability to respond to accidents is a direct issue of lack of police officers. So the biggest concern moving forward is filling that structural deficit that we currently have, $25 million on the police side, 20-something million dollars on the corrections side, in order that we do not have to lay off police officers. So we have to define a matrix, a budgeting formula in order that we balance that budget and have additional revenue moving forward that we can hire additional police officers.
So by both of your answers, may I assume, I'm putting words in your mouth almost, but may I assume that you will change the policy initiated by Sheriff Doug Gillespie to where when there are auto accidents that officers will be responding to them?
Yes, definitely. This is Joe Lombardo, by the way. Yes, definitely moving forward. Once we are able to have the resources to put back in that unit in order to be successful and eliminate the reasons why we went to it in the first place, we will respond to accidents.
Captain Burns?
Yes, on January the 3rd, I've said while being sworn in that we'll be responding to automobile accidents. It will be in a fashion that we did in the late 80s when John Moran was the sheriff, and we were struggling with the same thing, finding ways to fund more officers. We were short eventually. Under Jerry Keller's watch, we were able to get those additional officers, but in the meantime, we had to change the way that we responded to those so that we were able to meet the needs of the community. It is very difficult. We are in a structural deficit. We do. We're not talking about more cops, and when people say more cops, we're talking about the cops that we once had that people paid for that were approved. We're about 425 of those short. We're
going to get into some of the dollars and cents issues in just a little bit, and also talk about registration of firearms and the like. We've got a lot going on, but when we come back after traffic... 8:19 News Talk 720 KDWN. I'm Alan Stock, and a good morning. Great to have you with us. Yeah, you push the button on, Alan. That's how you can talk better that way. Great to have you with us, and great to have in studio with me right now. I have Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, retired Metro Captain Larry Burns. We're having a conversation about the office for sheriff, which they're both running for. And we're in early voting right now. And, of course, November 4th will be the election, and then we're all looking forward to November 5th and this whole thing being over already. That I know for sure. All right, let me go to one or two questions, and I've got more I want to get to. Make your questions very short, please. Al, you're on KDWN with Joe Lombardo and Larry Burns. Quick question, sir?
Yes. I have a question for the assistant chief. He stops a car in a traffic stop. He notices that the windows are dark tinted. He cannot see the driver or occupants. What is his plan to approach the car?
All right. I appreciate your call, Al, and have you take your answer on the air. I have you both respond. I know he directed it to you, Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, but I have you both respond to that.
Well, I would have to figure out what the core of the question is, where he was driving at. But the approach is no different than any other approach. We approach the vehicle in a courteous, practiced way that we are trained when we do any car stop, and have the individual driver lower the window and go through the questions and or requests with the driver of the vehicle. Now, I think the intent is the tinted window, whether you can see in it or not, and it creates a safety hazard for the police officer. Well, we live in a desert environment, and there are some rules associated with the level of tint that you're able to have within the law. Some tint is able to be had within the law, and it's a matter of comfort for drivers within this desert environment. So we address those that are above the law or against the law. The tint level, you can receive a citation, but as far as officer safety, it's a normal approach on any vehicle stop.
I have seen cars, by the way, where the tint on the side windows, the driver's window and the shotgun window, are they're opaque.
And in those cases, you ask the driver via bullhorn or voice to lower the windows so you can have acuity with the driver of the vehicle and or passengers to ensure the officer's safety. So,
Captain Burns?
That's a good question, Al. And because I'll just take this just a little further. Just think about that. You have the responsibility to walk up on a car that you cannot see the occupants, and you have no idea what they're thinking. They've obviously committed a traffic infraction, but you know very little. If the windows are legally tinted, then that's designed that in daylight with sunlight or the ambient light from the day going through the front windshield, you're able to make out hands, the movement of hands, the figures that are inside. You may not be able to get a good look at their face, but faces don't hurt you. Hands hurt you.
If they're legally tinted.
If they're legally tinted. If the suspicion is, if you have a greater suspicion, if it's nighttime, our lights, our spotlights, are designed to do the same thing, to give you that view inside.
But what if the tinting opaques it, though? So
We always have the ability to stand at the right rear corner of the vehicle or the left rear corner of the vehicle and ask the driver to please lower your window. And I would just advise drivers that if you have tinted windows, one of the best things that you can do is when you put the car in park, roll the window down so that you are able to be seen. Put your hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and then just listen to the officer. You have every right to, if it's not explained to you immediately, what you were stopped for, who the officer is. But it's a good question. It just points to the danger of a misdemeanor car stop, an everyday car stop. One of the most dangerous things we do.
real quickly, would if you encounter, both of you would encounter a situation like that, and the window is opaque, so you cannot see through it, would you cite someone for that?
Yeah, that's a normal practice to cite people for that infraction. But it's up to the officer's discretion more often than not.
All right, that's Assistant to Sheriff Joe Lombardo. Captain Burns, would you cite them?
Well, it's a fix-it ticket, so understand that. It's a design that you replace that tint with something else, and, you can. If I'm stopping Alan Stock and, and I tell him, Alan, you've got, come on, pal, you're beyond on this one. I'll see you again if you don't get it fixed. But it's to the discretion of the officer. The desire of a traffic stop is, and remember this, it's not a revenue generator for Las Vegas Metro, certainly. It is to change behaviors, driving behaviors. And whether you cite, whether you warn, whether you arrest, is dependent upon each individual circumstance.
Yeah, when I bought my car, they showed me the tinting they could do in the back windows, darker, and then the shotgun in the driver's window a little bit lighter. And I wanted it darker, and then I was informed that that's a violation. It's against the law. They would have done it, but we all decided it was best to just stay within the law, then you don't get hassled. 257 KDWN 702-257-5396. Richard, a quick question for Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo and retired Metro Captain Larry Burns. Richard?
Yes.
Quick question, sir, quick.
I've got some concerns about your statements on firearms. Anyone that fires a weapon within city limits, there's going to be hundreds of people within potential range of harm from that weapon. If you guys wouldn't trust anyone, adults, to carry in college or high school, why would I believe you guys would trust anyone? It sounds like logically you wouldn't trust anyone who's not a police officer with a weapon.
All right, I'm going to have you take the answer on the air. Do you both support CCW? Period.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
All right, so I think he was concerned about the college question. I don't want to revisit that. We've got a lot of other ones to get to. Right now, I want to know, and this is one question that's come up several times, do you support the idea of continuing the requirement that all handguns be registered and the owner must secure a blue card for each item? Assistant Sheriff Lombardo?
No, I don't. I do not support that. When elected sheriff, I will discontinue that program. And
If you discontinue it, I've got to ask this then. The follow-up question is, would the ability to immediately trace a gun used in a crime and retrieved by the police become more tedious and more time-consuming?
No, I mean, the age of technology, it's becoming easier to access that information moving forward. What the bigger concern is resources associated with the gun registration, that we can reallocate those resources towards CCW permitting. We're pushing the limit of 120 days to provide a license, and I believe those resources can be better utilized to speed up the timeline associated with that.
I think the sheriff told me that's being reduced right now to about 100 days. They're trying to work that out.
Well, it was. We were cresting 120 for a short period of time. We've put some systems in place. We're right around 100 100 days, but we're working people as hard as they can, and we need to get them the resources in order to be a bit more effective and efficient.
Captain Burns, same thing. Do you support the idea of continuing the requirement all handguns be registered and the owner must secure a blue card for each firearm?
No, we are in agreement on this one. The resources, it's a redundancy now in 2014. With the computer systems that we have, we're able to gather the information that we need. I will offer the opportunity for citizens, should they desire, to keep an inventory of those weapons if they so desire. But I've got to tell you, this is the concern that I would have for the average gun owner. If you go home tonight, you find out that your weapons have been stolen, and it doesn't have to be a registered weapon, i.e. you've got a shotgun or a rifle, which you don't have to register.
Correct.
Can you put your hands on the serial number of that weapon, the only real identifier of that weapon that's inscribed, it's permanent? Can you put your hand on those so that immediately we can get those into our systems as being stolen, so that when we come across them, perhaps minutes after the crime, we're able to tie that back to a victim and make the appropriate arrest when we've done that. That's important. That's important for every gun owner to know that responsible gun ownership includes being aware that if your weapons aren't secured and they are stolen, can you get that into the systems so that the individuals who have taken your property can be brought to justice immediately?
When you buy a firearm, whether it's a rifle or a handgun, I mean, they give you paperwork which has the serial numbers on them. So
they do.
The wise thing to do, obviously, is to keep that paperwork. Is that right?
Right, exactly. And, the bridge off of what Larry was saying, it's amazing how many individual firearms that we encounter in police work, and we contact the owners of those firearms, and they don't even know the firearm is missing. And that's just as high as level of importance as he had described, is knowing where your firearms are at all time, and you secure those in a proper fashion.
All right, I'm talking with Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, retired Mentor Captain Larry Burns. This thing's going fast, and we've got very little time left, but we're going to get to more questions and your questions as well after we check in with news, traffic, and weather right here on News Talk 720, KDWN, KDON. 8:38 News Talk 720, KDWN. I'm Alan Stockton. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday morning. 9 o'clock, it's the KDON Legal Hour with Haynes and Krieger. And don't forget, tonight, it's Thursday Night Football with KDON at Jerry's Nugget. Join Dave Carney and Chad Forster, hosts of Live in Las Vegas, for all the Thursday night fun beginning at 5 o'clock. San Diego, Denver, 5 o'clock, and you get $1 drinks and all kinds of stuff out there. Just head on out there and have a great time. It's going to be a lot of fun. 5 o'clock at Jerry's Nugget. Joining me in studio right now, the two men running for Sheriff of Clark County, Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo and retired Metro Captain Larry Burns. Two good people. I got some text here. Let me just read this real quick before I get back to the calls. Alan, I've seen people with windshields tinted. Is that legal? And the answer, gentlemen, is
No.
No.
No. For
Only
both
the
them.
visor strip.
Only the visor strip, which I've got in my car too. I know there's not enough time. How do you budget a night? We only have 4 guys at, for example, an MGM fight. You know that you need 20, etc. How do you get that? And the answer is
Special events.
Special events. They pay for their own special events. These are easy.
These are easy.
And real quickly, this person wants to know about having a tourist lotto to fund police. Tourists could participate in it. I mean, people go down to a Prim and they buy tickets. I don't know.
Yeah, they do, and that's been a solution that's been presented in the past for several years, as long as I've been in Las Vegas. But it's something that has to be passed by the legislature, and more often than not, the casino industry pushes back on that. So
It has been, as we know, brought up many times to fund education, typically.
Right.
But it hasn't made it in Southern Nevada. So,
quick question for you, Captain Burns, from Terry: will you be getting salaries if you win, retired and pay for a sheriff?
I have my retirement, and because you have to be retired to be the sheriff, and I've earned that in my 28 years of service. And yes, there is a salary associated with being Clark County Sheriff.
So you have to retire. Does that mean if you win Assistant Sheriff Lombardo that you will retire and then?
yes, the PERS system requires you to do that because it's a complete separate funding mechanism.
There we go. 257 KDWN at 702-257-5396. Let's go to Mark. Mark, a quick question for these two gentlemen.
Thank you, officers. How would you protect the citizenry, I guess, on the next BLM event? It seems that the citizens do not have too much protection once they're on BLM land in Clark County. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, appreciate your call this morning, Mark. Have you take your answer on the air? Who wants to tackle this first? Assistant Sheriff Lombardo.
Well, I will tackle it. I mean, it's similar to the situation that was presented by Clive and Bundy in the situation out in Bunkerville. We provide the resources to ensure public safety at the best of our ability, and I believe we did that day at that event. We averted a tragic event. If it would have been basically a bloodbath if there was firearms exchanged out there. We will continue to support the citizenry in Clark County as a police force, and that's our duty and that's our mission to provide that protection. I don't believe the BLM is out to seek to harm citizens. That is not their mantra or their job, and I don't believe that would occur. Now, if there's another situation out similar to Bunkerville, we will continue to provide protection in that vein, similar to what we did previous. And I anticipate we'll see those type of events moving forward because, as a nation, we're starting to see more separatist, anti-government groups banding together and pushing back on the government. So I feel we are trained and equipped within Las Vegas Metro to provide that protection.
Captain Burns.
We have a lot of BLM land in Nevada, as those who are listening hopefully know. And we do seek to protect the public on all areas of BLM land. Now, to give an example, we've got a couple of rescue helicopters. We provide rescues consistently in all parts of BLM jurisdiction. We work with them. We work alone. We have jurisdiction throughout Clark County, all 8,000 square miles. And you'll see us. We have four-wheel vehicles. We have four-wheel drive, you name it, we're there, and we seek the safety of the public wherever they are on property in southern Nevada.
I'll tell you, I think Sheriff Gillespie did a remarkable job in getting the BLM and Bundy supporters to both stand down at Bunkerville, because I talked to people who were up there as it was happening. I was not up there personally, but I was talking to as it was happening, and somebody made a comment that had somebody dropped a glass of milk on a rock, there would have been blood running all over the place. I mean, people would have been shooting, and we've seen pictures of people who are hunkered down pointing their rifles at the BLM. We know BLM had their firearms pointed, and I think Sheriff Gillespie did an incredibly great job. Let me ask you this. The BLM, I don't think that they contacted the Sheriff Gillespie before they initiated the process up there to confiscate the cattle. Is this something that should be done? I mean, if whichever one is the next sheriff, would you make a point of contacting the BLM saying, next time you come here to do anything like that, let me know so we can be aware of it ahead of time?
No, they did. I was part of that operation that day, and the BLM did contact us more than a month prior to the predicted operation. And in conversation with them, because this is the second time they attempted to come forward and gather up those cattle. The first time it was a civil process. The second time it was a criminal process. And we convinced them to err their ways in the civil process, that there was a better way to do business. Subsequently, their hand was pushed by a federal lawsuit. It converted to a criminal charge, and then they met with us in order to seek solutions to gathering of the cattle. We pushed back on the BLM. We told them it was not advisable, that it would better be served through the court system. They decided that was not the solution they were seeking or were going to participate in. So they went forward against our better wishes.
When they went forward without your better wishes, were there police officers there from Metro as this was happening to oversee this?
No. Well, yes, there was. Yes and no. We have resident officers out in Bunkerville that were there to support. Plus, you had the Mesquite officers there to oversee what was taking place at that time. We were gathering intelligence on a daily basis. Once it they started to gather cattle, there was not any pushback by the Bundy supporters or the Bundy family in the beginning. And then, obviously, it started to escalate over time.
When the supporters
and
came
then
in.
as it escalated, we provided more protection, and we went forward until that inevitable day where we had to step in and take over.
I'll let you respond just a moment, Captain Burns, because we've got to head on over to traffic right now, and then we'll continue. 8:50 at News Talk 720 KDWN. I'm Alan Stock, and I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I want to thank very much Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo and retired Metro Captain Larry Burns, two gentlemen who have come in to face the questions and to talk about how they would handle situations, and I think that is what is important. So you can make the tough decision for yourself who you're going to vote for, because I think they're both equally as qualified. That's my bias. 257 KWN 702-257-5396. A quick question from Paul. Paul, quick question. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, gents, the president's probably going to grant amnesty to about 34 million people. Some of those people coming in are criminals. They know that. We're going to get a lot of them because we're really close to the border. How is prison space for Clark County? And if you don't have enough, what are you going to do once these guys start committing crimes here?
All right, I appreciate your call. I'll take your answer on the air. Captain Burns?
We're full. Prison space is very, very limited, or space for incarceration awaiting prosecution. We've built that Clark County Detention Center 30 years ago. We had a major upgrade to it, but it remains at its peak. The vast majority of the time, there's not space there. We have another off-site detention facility, but as we deal with it now, anyone who commits felony crime goes through the process. If they're undocumented, then they get turned over to INS once they've been admitted to the detention center. We arrest, we cite based on the crimes that we encounter. We've not been inhibited by that. But he brings up a good question. We are looking consistently for other programs to deal with lesser offenders so that we can have that jail space that we need for the most violent offenders in our community, crimes against the people.
Assistant Sheriff Lombardo?
Yes, he's correct. We are at our capacity, and we continue to be at our capacity. For example, we did over 78,000 individual arrests last year. Our capacity is right around 4,000. But as part of that solution, and let me just get in a little bit segue, is we have a $30 million renovation going on at the main detention center, and subsequently we've had to move 1,000 inmates over to the North Valley complex, and that was intended to supplement the capacity at the detention center. So as an answer, we had to move those individuals because of the construction, and that's a 3-year project. So what is the answer in the short term and the long term? Well, we've reached out to other jurisdictions, and we've lease space from other jurisdictions such as Henderson, the city of Las Vegas, and Pahrump, and we're utilizing that space available to us. And more often than not, it's at a cheaper rate than we normally pay at the detention center. So we're working through the solutions associated with the space capacity, and then we're also working with the county to ensure that we have the proper budget to fund that capacity.
We got a text in with one of my favorite questions. I'm sure I should have asked it, but this person did. Can a sheriff appoint his own staff? And since we can't have dual sheriffs, would either of you be able to appoint your opponent as an assistant? I don't know. Assistant Sheriff Lombardo?
I believe the NRS, and I'm not 100% sure, I believe the NRS enables you to appoint one individual on your staff outside of the civil service, but more than likely the staff comes from within the police department. So,
Captain Burns?
The way that it is written is that the appointed staff have to have reached the commission appointed staff have to reach the tested rank of captain, and from that you appoint deputy chiefs, assistant sheriffs if you desire to have them, an under sheriff typically, that's one of the that's one of the responsibilities that go with the job, but you are limited as to who you can use. And then as Joe has said, regarding the one individual that you're allowed to appoint from outside, you can bring in directors. There's a number of ways to maneuver within that realm, but That's how it goes.
I think a lot of people would like to see whoever wins get the other one in working, because I think you guys would both work well together. Body cameras, Captain Burns.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
They should be wearing.
They're coming. They will be here whether we like it or not. And this is what I have to say about them on both sides. There is a lot to be said about wearing a body camera your entire shift, recording everything that you do. Because contrary to public opinion, even when you turn them off, most of them are designed to continue recording on a 60-second or a 30-second loop.
That means when you use the facilities also?
Well, this becomes, or you're on the telephone, but the reality is there are technologies that are in place. There are things that are occurring. What we understand is, look, we can expect to be recorded everywhere that we are at. And why not have that on us? We find that in 87% nationwide of the complaints that are made, when the complainant finds out that it has been recorded, video and audio, they voluntarily drop their complaint. That's a good thing for law enforcement.
I would agree with that. Assistant Sheriff Lombardo?
Absolutely. Fully support body cameras, and we are moving forward currently with Metro. We actually have the most deployed out of any major police department across the nation right now. We are in a study program with the DOJ on the effectiveness of those cameras, but I plan on continually to purchase them into the future and ensure that our officers are outfitted with them.
Yeah, I think obviously citizens want them for their own protection, and I think it's great for the officers too, because a lot of times people make accusations against the officers. They did this, they did that, and it would automatically show that the officer was in the right and was not abusing power or authority, and I think it'll protect everybody all the way around. It's unfortunate we've come to that, but welcome to 2014, almost 2015. We've got very little time, 45 seconds for each one of you. I'll let you wrap it up for 45 seconds. Assistant Sheriff Lombardo?
Well, I ask that my education, my vision, and my experience speaks for the community's vote. This community is in need of a strong leader with stamina, and I believe I'm the right person at the right time for that, and I really would appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Captain Burns.
And I believe that my record of reducing violent crime in our community speaks for itself. My record of dealing with police use of force issues, and my 7 years as a commander of our tactical team in Southern Nevada, and many years in tactical expertise. The ability to make life and death decisions in a moment's notice in the middle of the night has helped to prepare me, along with my experience from working from everything in executive staff with Sheriff Gillespie as his right-hand man down to our training staff and our training academy. I've had the opportunity to do everything in between, and I too would appreciate people remembering me as they cast their ballots. But above all, please vote. Please vote.
Yeah. What we have here are two good people. This is probably to be the most difficult choice for people in this election to vote for one of the two of you, because I think you're both eminently qualified and would make great sheriffs. I'm not just saying that. I really mean that. No other race, I think, requires that kind of thought, how people are going to go vote. So I wish you both equal luck. I mean, I'm serious. Whoever wins already said they'll come in once a month, so that's cool too. But I wish you the very, very best. Whoever wins, though, Clark County will be richer for it. So good luck to you both.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan. Really appreciate your listeners as well.
I think that Sheriff Doug Gillespie has done a fabulous job, and I think that he is also he's been one of the most, as they say, transparent. Keep using that word. Of all the people I've ever met in any kind of elected office before. And I appreciate the fact that you're all willing to follow through with that also. So, again, good luck to you both. Joe Lombardo, Larry Burns, you decide. I know it's tough, but, hey, listen, you got to make the decision. Tonight, Thursday Night Football, KDWN at Jerry's Nugget. Join Dave Carney and Chad Forster, host of Live Las Vegas, for all the Thursday night fun beginning at 5. San Diego and Denver, $1 hot dogs, pizza slices, PBR, $2 Corona Modelo, plus tons of great prizes. That starts at 5 o'clock. Jerry's Nugget with the big football game with Dave and Chad, as a matter of fact. Coming up next, the KDWN Legal Hour with Haynes and Krieger. Tomorrow, with a little luck, be back to do it again with our big entertainment show. Have a great day. Drive carefully, and always keep on thinking free.